One decision made in Washington can change oil prices in the Middle East, affect elections in Europe, and shake financial markets in Asia. This is not coincidence. It is power. The United States is not just another country in global politics. It is the central force shaping modern world order. But how did this happen? And more importantly, why does it still matter today? Understanding American power is not about supporting or opposing the United States. It is about understanding how the world actually works. Because whether you live in Asia, Europe, Africa, or the Middle East, your economy, security, and even daily life are influenced, directly or indirectly, by decisions made in America. How this power operates. American influence does not rely on a single tool. It is built on multiple layers of power: military reach, financial control, technological dominance, and institutional leadership. In this video, we will break down each of these layers clearly, step by step, to understand how the United States maintains its position at the center of global power. And to understand how this system works today, we first need to look at the most visible form of American power: its global military reach. When people think of American power, they often think of weapons. But the real story is not about weapons, it's about reach. The United States has a military presence in more parts of the world than any country in history. The scale. The U.S. operates hundreds of military installations across more than 70 countries. These include permanent bases, rotational deployments, and strategic access points. No other nation comes close to this level of global positioning. Why this matters? This presence allows the United States to respond to crises faster than any other power. It doesn't need to move forces across oceans. It is already there. Military power in this sense is not just about fighting wars. It is about deterrence, influence, and reassurance. How it works? American military reach is built around logistics and alliances. Aircraft carriers function as mobile bases, capable of projecting power anywhere in the world. Strategic airlift allows troops and equipment to move across continents within hours. This system ensures that American influence is not limited by geography. NATO and alliances' U.S. military power is amplified through alliances, most notably NATO. By leading military coalitions, the United States shares the burden of security while maintaining strategic leadership. This alliance-based approach transforms national power into global influence. The presence of U.S. forces often shapes regional politics without a single shot being fired. It affects diplomatic negotiations, regional security decisions, and even economic stability. In many regions, American military presence acts as a guarantee or a warning. But military power alone does not explain America's dominance. In fact, the most powerful American weapon does not belong to the Pentagon. It belongs to the financial system. To understand that, we need to look at the role of the U.S. dollar. When countries go to war, they use weapons. When America wants influence, it often uses the dollar. The U.S. dollar is not just America's currency. It is the backbone of the global financial system. Today, the majority of global trade is conducted in U.S. dollars. Central banks around the world hold large portions of their reserves in dollars. Oil, commodities, and international contracts are largely priced in the American currency. Why the dollar became so powerful? This didn't happen by accident. After World War II, the United States emerged as the world's largest economy with stable institutions and military security. The global financial system that followed was built around the dollar, placing the United States at the center of international trade and finance. How dollar power works today? Because so much of global trade depends on the dollar, access to the American financial system becomes essential. Banks, companies, and even governments rely on U.S.-based clearing systems to move money across borders. This gives the United States enormous leverage, not through force, but through access. When the U.S. tightens financial conditions or restricts access to the dollar system, the effects are felt worldwide. Currency values shift, markets react, and economies adjust, often within days. In many cases, the dollar achieves what military force cannot, influencing behavior without deploying a single soldier. But dollar dominance is only one part of the economic story. The United States has another powerful tool, one that can isolate entire countries from the global economy. That tool is economic sanctions. Modern power is no longer exercised only through armies and invasions. Today, some of the most impactful decisions are made in offices, not battlefields, through policies, regulations, and economic restrictions. What sanctions really are? Economic sanctions are measures that restrict a country's ability to trade, move money, or access global markets. When imposed by the United States, these restrictions often extend far beyond America's borders because of the dollar's central role in global finance. Why sanctions are so effective? The effectiveness of U.S. sanctions comes from scale and integration. Many international banks, corporations, and shipping networks depend on access to American markets and financial systems. Losing that access can be more damaging than direct military confrontation. How sanctions are enforced? Sanctions are enforced through financial institutions, international compliance rules, and corporate regulations. Companies around the world often comply, not because they are forced by their own governments, but because they cannot afford to lose access to the U.S. financial system. Sanctions can affect national currencies, inflation, investment flows, and everyday life within targeted countries. They also influence diplomatic negotiations by altering the economic cost of political decisions. While sanctions are powerful, they are not without consequences. They can reshape alliances, create alternative financial networks, and sometimes push countries to seek independence from the dollar system. Economic power, however, does not operate in isolation. It is reinforced by something far less visible, but equally influential: technology and corporate dominance. To understand modern American influence, we now need to look at Silicon Valley. American power today does not come only from governments or armies. So where does modern influence really come from? In many cases, it comes from technology and from companies that billions of people depend on every day. Many of the world's most influential technology firms are based in the United States. They control platforms that shape communication, commerce, information, and digital infrastructure worldwide. But why does this matter? Because control over platforms means influence over behavior. So how does this influence actually work? Decisions about data access, algorithms, infrastructure, and platform rules, often made in the United States, can affect users, businesses, and even governments across the world. And there is another important question. Under whose laws do these companies operate? Most operate under U.S. legal and regulatory systems. This means American laws, court rulings, and national security policies often extend far beyond U.S. borders through corporate networks. It doesn't pressure governments directly. It shapes habits, dependence, and systems over time. But technology does not act alone. Its influence is reinforced by international institutions and alliances that help define how the global system works. To understand that layer of power, we now need to look at who writes the rules and why others follow them. Power is not only about force or money, it is also about rules. So who writes the rules that govern trade, finance, security, and global cooperation? In the modern world, many of those rules are shaped through international institutions and alliances. The United States plays a central role in organizations such as the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and global trade frameworks. These institutions influence how countries borrow money, manage crises, and integrate into the global economy. But why does institutional leadership matter? Because rules decide outcomes long before conflicts begin. When standards, conditions, and frameworks are set in advance, countries operate within systems they did not fully design. Influence in this sense comes not from direct control, but from shaping the environment in which decisions are made. Alliances amplify this power. Through security partnerships and economic cooperation, the United States extends its influence while sharing responsibility with allies. So how does this leadership actually work? By combining economic strength, diplomatic reach, and institutional credibility, the U.S. helps define what is considered normal, acceptable, or necessary in global affairs. This form of power is often overlooked because it is stable and procedural, but it is also one of the most enduring. When military reach, financial influence, technology, and rule-making power operate together, they form a system, not just dominance. The final question is this: what does this system mean for the rest of the world? By now, one thing should be clear. American power is not based on a single factor. It is a system built from military reach, financial influence, technology, and rule-making institutions. But what does this system actually mean for the rest of the world? For many countries, it means stability, predictable trade, security alliances, and access to global markets. For others, it creates dependence, pressure, or limited room to maneuver. So why does this matter to ordinary people? Because decisions made in the United States can influence currency values, fuel prices, investment flows, technology access, and even regional security, often without being immediately visible. This influence is not always intentional. In many cases, it is the result of how deeply American systems are embedded in global structures. And here is the key point. Understanding American power is not about approval or criticism. It is about awareness. In a connected world, no country operates in isolation. To understand global events, from economic shifts to political crises, we must understand the systems that shape them. This is why understanding America matters. Not because it controls the world, but because it helps define how the world operates. This was America Explained. If you value clear, structured analysis of global power and U.S. politics, consider subscribing.